Little Archie, issue 93. Reggie thinks he'll win the art show, and Betty tells Sabrina to go to cooking class. Why do they have cooking class when they're just kids? That's just a high school thing in my experience. They're told to bake a cake, and Sabrina uses magic when no one's looking to get the ingredients together and pour some. She also makes a pie fly with wings. Grundy says her cake looks beautiful and gets thanked, but she hates its taste. Sabrina says she forgot all about taste. And the story ends with Sabrina entering her creation in an art show because it's only good for its looks. And the story is already over, with Sabrina winning first place at the art show. This story was about Sabrina using magic in cooking class and getting away with it, which is fun to see. But then she finds out her cake tasted terrible because she forgot to make it taste good. She was too focused on showing off with magic in other ways. And then she wins the art show with it because it only looked good. There wasn't much to say. Reggie's part of the story at the beginning could have been cut out of the plot just fine. Little Archie, issue 94, the TV show. Sabrina sees Snow White, and Hilda's offended by it saying Wicked Witch. As usual, it's confusing that her aunts are like this because they're shaped like the 70s comic versions. Zelda wants Sabrina to listen to a TV show about a good witch, and Hilda says they should start one. She uses magic to show off a new TV show with a hologram. In the show, Sabrina's dressed like a witch in front of a magic mirror and says, "Magic mirror, bright and gay." She wants to know where she could sell her vegetables today. While it is lazy to rip off Snow White, it's at least explained that Hilda's writing the story and not a real writer. Sabrina's told she could sell them all by taking it to the home of the 7 little men. She flies there and says she's out of apples. She offers them a tomato, and all of a sudden Sabrina's music teacher throws one at Weatherby, and Snow White says her dwarves are always fighting, while using the wrong plural of dwarves. Then the dwarves decide to run for the hills just because one of them is about to sneeze. Archie shows up and implies that it's all just a play, because it's the only part he could get thanks to his wife, Betty, who's holding a baby. It turns out the prince is Reggie. Reggie says he'll take Veronica away to his castle by stealing Sabrina's broom. Sabrina wonders how to get out of the woods because apparently she can't teleport or fly of her own magic. And Veronica at least gives her advice to help her, telling her to open a vegetable store instead. And Hilda says that was the start of the first supermarket. Arbitrarily, Zelda says people won't like the story for no reason, and the story ends with their own magic mirror saying he liked his part in the story. This story is about Hilda using magic to create a hologram showing off a TV show where Sabrina's innocently trying to sell vegetables to Snow White, only for the dwarves to fight and Prince Charming to steal her flying broom to get to his castle. Too bad Zelda thinks people won't believe it because it has imagination. The dwarves were unlikable out of nowhere, and the prince was made a thief to be a villain. But at least it led to a vegetable store being made. Little Archie, issue 95, Make a Wish, which is also in Sabrina's Haywire Hexes. Sabrina sits outside and tells Zelda there's nothing to do, and Zelda tells her recklessly to make a wishing well, even though Sabrina is able to make all of her wishes come true herself. So she is a wishing well. If witches could create a wishing well to make whatever they want to happen come true, then there really would be no spell they couldn't cast. At that point, why do witches even think they need to study magic? They could just use a wishing well for any spell that needs training, unless they're extremely pressed for time. I suppose her aunts don't tell her this specifically to keep her from wishing for things they don't want her to wish for with the wishing well, and they think it's more respectable to actually study magic than to take a cheap shortcut for every spell. Sabrina likes the idea for some reason, even though every time she's faced with a wish granter, she says she doesn't want to wish for anything, naturally because she can already grant any wish she wants herself. So this well is only useful for casting spells that she can't. Maybe she still has to visualize properly to get the wish to come true if she's using the wishing well. Then it's redundant because she would have done that anyways without a well, and the well wouldn't let her do anything new. Somehow neither of them realize this. Zelda laughs, so I hope she's just joking. For no reason, Sabrina decides to make some rocks follow her instead of just instantly creating a wishing well like I assumed. So Archie sees them from behind a tree, which he naturally didn't anticipate. The rocks fall, and he says he doesn't think he actually saw that. Lucky for her, he decides to drop it. She says she's gonna build a wishing well, and he decides to help her, immediately believing that a wishing well would actually work. And we're supposed to assume it's because he's a kid, for once taking advantage of the concept. But it'd make more sense if the reason he thought a wishing well would work is that he just saw Sabrina use magic. He lifts the rock as Jughead and Veronica show up, and all of them help build the well. Luckily, they're all able to build it perfectly despite being just kids. Wow. If Dilton was here, it'd make more sense. Did they use glue? Sabrina generously asks them who wants the first wish, when it's immediately obvious that could horribly backfire. It makes sense that she'd trust her friends, especially since she's just a kid. Jughead wishes for a dozen hot dogs heavy on the mustard. For absolutely no reason, he gets dogs instead of hot dogs, even though he clearly wouldn't have imagined it like this. There's no having this make sense. But it is funny to see Archie wish to be a baseball pitcher and then look like a giant pitcher with a baseball cap on. He runs off, wondering if he can find a quart of milk, and naturally the kids run away scared, after somehow Sabrina just asks Reggie what he wants instead of immediately using magic to return Archie to normal. She acts like she doesn't even care what happened. Thankfully, it's a little explained at least. The well's sentient, so he only granted the wishes incorrectly as a joke. It actually makes sense that a reckless little kid would give her wishing well sentience, because that way it'd do the magic for her, and it needs some degree of intelligence to do that. But there's still no reason for her to make it capable of intentionally not giving people what they want. And I don't like that the well broke the fourth wall. This story was about Zelda telling a bored Sabrina to create a wishing well when she should know how badly that could backfire by now, and how redundant that is for a witch. And Sabrina naively lets her friends use the wishing well only for the wishes to be granted literally. At least it was amusing to see Archie turn into a pitcher, so I guess that made the story worth it. Especially since it was explained that the well granted the wishes wrong as a joke. But I don't know why she'd make the well able to intentionally grant wishes wrong. This story gets reprinted in Little Archie issue 177. And the beginning of its story is so generic, with Sabrina having no idea what to do and needing advice from her aunts, that it's not clear that it's that story until the second page, when it gets memorable. There's tons of stories in this comic that involve wish granting. Little Archie issue 96, Flyboy. Weatherby for no reason asks Reggie to be the master of ceremonies of the talent show. Won't everyone hate Reggie? Sabrina says she'll enter the talent show, and Reggie wonders if she'll do magic tricks. I like that. He knows she's a witch, but is smart enough to not waste time trying to get her help from it. She says she'll play the violin, and Betty tells Sabrina that Reggie's gonna work on his magic tricks. Out of nowhere, with just the excuse that Reggie's working hard, Sabrina decides to help Reggie with the show through her own magic powers. Why would she help Reggie? She's especially nice. Jughead plays the chopsticks. Despite wanting Reggie to win, she still wants to show off her violin playing and impress the audience. Reggie isn't even fazed when his flowers disappear, and Archie tells him sarcastically to fly like a plane. Then Reggie's freaked out when Sabrina makes him fly, but he can't stop and hits a wall. The story ends with them getting an unfair first place trophy without doing anything good to earn it. At least he realistically has a bandage on his head. This story is about Sabrina randomly deciding to make sure Reggie wins a talent show by making him fly in his magic act. I don't know why it was Reggie instead of anyone else. As nice as she is, it's still confusing and annoying that she made him win, so he gets a trophy he doesn't deserve. I suppose you could argue he should get a trophy to make up for getting a head injury, so it'd all be worth it. But it's not fair to the other contestants. And Reggie only got slapstick in one panel, so it wasn't going on long enough to really be worth it. Little Archie issue 97. the duel. Zelda wants Hilda's help, and Sabrina tells Hilda that Zelda's on a diet. The last time Zelda lost 3 pounds, she celebrated by eating a cake that gave her 6 pounds. Why does she want to go on a diet and lose weight the mortal way as a personal challenge? Why doesn't she just use magic to turn skinny? The 90s comic was smarter than this. Zelda tells Hilda to stop her from eating a chocolate cake. It's a shame she can't just use magic to make herself taste chocolate cake without actually eating it. Or is too dumb to think of that because she's too focused on wanting to actually eat it. Hilda makes the cake disappear instead of simply brainwashing her into not wanting to eat it. So Zelda fights with her instead of simply using magic to instantly bring the cake back. So they act like actual sisters for once and fight like little kids. Hilda instantly gives up after one panel and summons cakes with magic, even though she's a witch who could turn Zelda into a frog or magically force her to stop hurting her. The story ends with Zelda saying she'd lose more weight if Hilda was a better fighter. Little Archie, issue 98, A Smart Cookie. Sabrina agreed to a date with Reggie despite the fact that she'd know how bad he is. So the title's ironic right now. She says it was nice of him to invite her to a fish dinner and lampshades him not asking Veronica first. They turned him down, and then Sabrina gets mad at him for expecting her to go fishing. She's mad because she got all dressed up. She doesn't look dressed up. She looks like she's in her pajamas. It makes sense to agree to go on a date to eat a fish dinner until you remember that she's a witch who could just zap up a fish dinner. And if she somehow can't do it, she could ask Zelda. But she conveniently didn't prefer to do that over spending quality time with Reggie. She uses magic to scare Reggie, getting him pulled into the ocean by a fishing line where some talking fish who caught him treat him like a fish. Somehow Reggie can talk underwater, so I have to assume this is part of the spell too, as well as him not being able to question it. He's somehow sad that he won't be able to say goodbye to Archie. I guess he means a goodbye prank. He loses a part of his jacket and has to swim away from the fish. Sabrina finally feels guilty and says her magic got carried away because he's been down there a long time. She says a spell in front of Reggie to get rid of the fish, and it turns out more than one person fell for Reggie's fish gag. I don't know why he would pull it on Veronica. If Sabrina was a lot more optimistic, she would have just started fishing and had a good time, if Reggie actually wanted to go fishing. Especially if she just used magic to instantly catch fish so they could go home. This story is about Reggie telling Sabrina they'll have a fish dinner on a date, and for no reason she agrees to go with him instead of just using magic to get a fish dinner. It turns out he was joking and just planned on going fishing. Sabrina loses her temper because she got all dressed up, apparently, so she uses magic to scare him, which is fun to see because he thinks it's okay to prank people. But she could have just used magic to catch a fish and then gone home. It's good that she was shown feeling concerned about him to remind us of what her personality is supposed to be. I guess it makes sense that she agreed to the date if she hoped that she would see a different side of him. Little Archie, issue 99, Flying Dry. Hilda asks Sabrina to help her wash her hair all of a sudden. I guess she thinks of it as a way to bond with her because she could use magic to summon a genie to do it for her. She explains that Sabrina always makes the water the perfect temperature as Sabrina summons a container of water. She shampoos her and hands her the broom. And Hilda flies around on a broom to dry her hair in a creative way. Which was the end joke that was the whole reason the story was written. Sabrina doesn't explain why she wishes she just used an electric hairdryer instead, even though that'd be loud and take forever. This story suddenly revealed that Sabrina washes Hilda's hair for her, and I have to assume it's because she does a better job than she would. I like seeing Hilda dry her hair by flying on a broom, but I don't know why she does it indoors where there's almost no room to fly around. Little Archie, issue 100, The News Lady. After we see a brief flash forward in time where Hilda predicts snow in the summer and then makes it snow, cheating with magic to look like a great weather woman and inconveniencing people, we see a flashback where Hilda's sick of all of the bills and decides to make some money. Zelda says that when Hilda makes money with magic, it looks fake for no reason, and Hilda decides to get a job. I always love when one of her aunts gets a job. If only they could keep one. She sees a want ad for a writer for the newspaper. The editor laughs at her and asks her if she's gonna tell him his fortune. She says that's what he'll get and predicts that he's gonna rip that suit by sitting in that chair. She uses magic to make it happen. The guy sees a nail on the chair and hires her based on one thing that could have just been a coincidence for all he knows. So she decides to use magic some more for tomorrow's predictions. And she causes terrible chaos in the process. Then why was she offended at the Wicked Witch so much if she apparently is fine with being an evil witch? She thinks it's okay to make cars crash and a roof blow away for no reason. The story should at least explain that she's only inconveniencing the specific people that gave her a reason to hate them. The next day she's told to meet with someone when she just wants money. Go figure, she's in trouble. And gets told to make happy predictions. Thankfully, she humors them. A woman finds a $1,000 bill. Jughead wins an all-you-can-eat ice cream contest, which would waste a lot of ice cream for Pop to eat. Fang, of all people, gets the Nice Guy Award at school. So only one of those predictions is really good. It turns out the money Grundy found was counterfeit because Hilda zaps it up. And yet when Sabrina zaps up money for George Washington, it's fine. Why didn't she zap up gold? Sabrina does that and it's way simpler, and she was told at the start of the story that she sucks at zapping up money. So there's no excuse for making that mistake. Pop Tate had to close his shop, and Fangs is beating up everyone who calls him nice. So that's supposed to be Fang, not Moose. But he acts just like Moose. So of course I got confused. And there's no point using a different character if he's just like him. It's refreshing to see a newspaper editor in a story really care about the right thing. He's actually opposed to bad things happening instead of just wanting a new story to write about. Hilda got put in charge of the puzzle page next. And Hilda says that he might think she'll quit if she can't solve any puzzle. Why is she expected to solve a puzzle? Won't she be expected to make puzzles? Then Sabrina breaks the fourth wall by telling the audience to try to solve the puzzles. Sure, why not? Both Betty and Veronica can complete the maze. I love that I can still do the puzzles if I open a screenshot of the page in MS Paint. And the maze's paths are slightly bigger than the paths of a lot of other mazes. So it's easier to see the whole maze in general and figure out where it's safe to go next. So it's so easy to do the mazes that eventually they feel pointless. The word puzzle's weird because you have to form the words hot dog by making both a vertical and horizontal connection of letters. Well, that was fun, I guess. Anyways, of course Hilda uses magic. Her boss should have expected her to cheat. Maybe he's waiting to fire her if she did. Surprisingly, she just gives Sabrina a blank section of a newspaper because no news is good news. This story is about Hilda getting hired to make predictions for the newspaper because of her magic. And for no apparent reason, she makes bad things happen to people. And even for the good predictions, she does blatantly stupid things like have the school bully get a Nice Guy Award and summon money when she was told by Zelda earlier that she sucks at it for no reason. This was an arbitrary story. None of her good predictions were worth it. And somehow she's told to do a different job instead of just fired right away when the editor wants her to quit. But it was a relaxing time getting to do some of the puzzles. I hate unscrambling word puzzles though.